Before we move on, there actually are a couple more things I want to do. They're mostly aesthetic stuff, but you know, it's good to have your game look good. And a big fix. Major bug fix. I'm not talking about our create codex buttons being called twice. I'm actually not sure why that's happening. I'm assuming it's a bug within the engine, because I've debugged it as best I could and I couldn't find a reason for it to be called. What I'm talking about is over here in our show codex details. When we modify our existing codex detail widgets, we're only modifying the very first one because we never plugged in our index to our array index. Make sure you plug that in. Hopefully you already saw that issue for yourself, but if you didn't, that's why your codex wasn't working properly. So let's compile and save this, and if we hit play, start, break it, go to our codex, choose pot, choose Yuri, choose pot, it all works fine, great. Now I want our menu to fade in and out instead of just sort of popping in like it does right now, because it's sort of not great to look at. So let's go to our menu. We're going to go to our designer, add a new animation, and I'm going to call this what should I call this? Fade in. And we don't actually need a fade out animation because we're just going to play this in reverse when we fade out. But for our fade in, let's go to our canvas panel. We're going to animate this render opacity. So at 0 times 0, we're going to set a keyframe of 0. And at 0.25, I'm going to do a opacity of 1. Hit play, and that's our animation. I also want this to not ease in and out because I think that looks bad. Let's right click this and choose linear. Now back in our graph, I'm going to make a new function. I'm going to call this custom event. I'm going to call this show menu widget. Sure. And all this is going to do is play the animation when it's called when we're not visible and set the active widget index. So let's copy this and plug in our index to our show menu widget to give it a index input. And then we're going to branch based on our opacity of our canvas panel. So let's make sure this is a variable. By default it wouldn't be, but let's make sure it is. And we're going to get our canvas panel. Don't set it. Get our canvas panel and get opacity. Actually, there's a better way of doing this, but for now we're just going to do this to say nearly equal. We're going to change it to be the better way in this video, but right now I just want this branch to be here. So let's branch. So if it's not visible, we are going to play the animation. So in our animations, get fade in, and play animation. Now I want this to be called, I want to use this function instead of doing all this stuff because there's really no point if I do it the other way. So let's do show menu widget, copy, paste, and paste. And these are going to be 1, 2, 3. I also want our dialog widget to call this now, instead of doing this stuff. I especially don't want to remove myself in the parent anymore, because when we have our menu fade in, we want it to fade in on top of our dialog widget instead of having our dialog widget disappear. So let's delete all this stuff, and we're just going to say show menu widget. This is going to be index 1, 2, and 3. Two, 3, and make sure this is plugged in. So let's try this right now. If we were to hit play, start, go to our codex, and nothing's happening. That is because when we hit start on click start right here, we add our dialog widget to the viewport, and then we remove ourselves from the parent. So let's get rid of this remove from parent so that we're always in the screen. And if we were to try to hit play and do our codex, we're still not seeing anything. If we were to debug this, however, over here in the show menu, this right here, you'll notice that this is actually being run, but we're not doing anything. And we are opaque because this is returning false, so this is not being called. The reason we're not seeing anything is because our menu widget is underneath our dialog widget right now. Because when we do on-click start, we're adding our dialog widget to our viewport. So let's also get rid of this. And when it adds it to the viewport, it's adding it on top of our dialog widget. Our menu widget. That's why it's on top. So instead, what we're going to do is go to our game mode, and on the false, we're going to add our dialog widget to a screen. Add to viewport. We're going to do it before we add our menu widget to our viewport. Like so. That way, our menu is going to be on top all the time. So if we, well, right now we're seeing our dialog widget because we added it to the viewport, but let's go to our menu and give it a background image so we don't see it. So background image, before I set my opacity to alpha to 0 because we didn't have an image, but now we're going to set this to 1, and let's just choose our modern street. So let's hit play and we hit start. We don't see anything because our what's it called? Background image is, or our menu is on top and it's still visible. So let's actually go to our menu, and in the graph on start we're going to set visibility to, actually not set it, well, we do need to set our visibility, but let's do that later. Break this link. We're going to set render opacity to 0. Hit play again, start. Now we see our dialog widget, but now we can't click anywhere because we're still on top and we're still, well, we're not visible, but the stuff inside of our menu widget is visible. So we're clicking on that stuff instead of clicking on our dialog widget. So after we set our render opacity, let's set our visibility for our canvas panel here to be hit test invisible. Hit play now, and we can now click around and go to our Codex, and nothing's happening. Is this being called? Let me just... That's being called, but our render opacity is not nearly equal to 0, which is very strange. We need to set the render opacity of our canvas panel over here to 0. Start Codex, there we go. Now our menu fades in, and if we go, well, these are the wrong buttons being shown up. Menu and, well, actually back isn't being shown up. Right, I forgot to deal with that. So our back, we don't actually need this stuff over here. Our back can actually just connect to our very first set visibility over here. And I also forgot to deal with our gallery button. This gallery button is only going to be visible if we're not in game, so we're going to connect it to our second set visibility. So let's try that one more time. Start, go to our Codex. We can not click on anything. Well, we're clicking on stuff, but we're clicking on our what's the word? Dialog widget behind us, because we are right now hit test invisible. So let's take care of that. Instead of, after we play our animation, we're also going to get our canvas panel and set visibility to self hit test invisible like it used to be, because by default it is self hit test invisible, meaning it's we can't click on the canvas panel itself, but everything else underneath it has its own hit test visibility. So if we do this, and instead of checking our render opacity now, we can just check our canvas panel visibility. So let's get our canvas panel, get visibility, and we're going to ask if it's equal to hit test invisible. like that. Let's try this one more time, and we hit play, start, go to our codex, and we can now click on stuff. If we hit back, it does what it used to, and now our codex can't pop up, because in our back button over here, we're removing ourselves from parent and adding our dialog widget to viewport. We don't want to do that. What we want to do instead is play our animation backwards to fade ourselves out, and then set our visibility back to, well, hit test invisible. So let's do that. We'll get our fade animation, or fade in. We're going to say play animation, and we're going to play it backwards, reverse. And then we're going to get our, canvas panel, set visibility to be hit test invisible. Hit play now, start, go to our codex, go back, and now it fades away. Codex, back, great. And it won't do the fade animation if we're already visible. Go back, and we can go to the next line, go to our codex. Great. What else? Right, so if we were to hit play right now, and we start, go to our codex, choose pot, go back, and we break it, and then we go to our codex, it still just says pot, because it's no longer updating, because this was updating on the event construct, but now it's no longer calling the event construct because we're always staying on screen. So instead of doing event construct, I'm just going to make a custom event. So let's call this add event, update codex, sure, just update codex, whatever. Like so, and in the menu, over here on the click codex, we're going to tell our codex widget to update codex. We're also going to do the same thing in our dialog widget when we do the codex button. So get the codex, w_codex, and update codex. Try this one more time, start, and go to our codex, choose pot, go back, break it, go to our codex, and now it updates properly. Wonderful. I'm sure I forgot something that's broken now with our the way we're doing our menu, but I can't think of anything. Update button visibility on event construct, that's good. We still want to do that. Unclicked, we're no longer removing ourselves from the parent anywhere. In our game mode, we're also not removing ourselves from parent. Okay, actually, on our game mode, if we are in game, it's going to say add our dialog widget to our viewport. But we don't want to do that because it's already in the viewport. So instead, let us get our menu widget and say set render opacity to 0, and also set the get canvas panel 0. Sorry, this is our target. Let's just break these links right there, and set visibility to hit test invisible. We wouldn't notice this error until we actually loaded this map while we're in game, but good to take care of it right now. And I can't really think of anything else that's wrong with it at the moment, so let's, well, unclick the menu. Let's see if this works. Start, options, click on menu, and we go back to our menu. Yeah, that works fine. Great. So let's move on to doing some other stuff. What other stuff that I have in mind? Gallery button. This is good. Right click to toggle our menu and our game. Okay. I want to be able to right click on our menu, but if you do, say, right mouse or anything like that inside of our codex or any widgets, for example, we can't actually do that. We can only do it in, say, our game mode if we were to do right. But, okay, actually that's also not showing up. But point is, we need to make a new input event. So let's go to Edit, Project Settings, and on the input over here, I'm going to add a new action mapping, and I'm going to call this toggle game/menu. And on this input, I'm going to do mouse button, right mouse button. And I can also do another one if we want for, say, escape, but you know, it's whatever. You can do whatever buttons you want. But back in our game mode, I'm going to right click and say toggle games. Sorry, not game mode. Game mode can't do it either. In our player controller over here, if we open the full blueprint editor, over here we're going to right click and say toggle game/menu. And on released, I'm going to toggle between them. So we're going to say get game instance. Sorry, this is a pure function, so we can't drag off here and do it. We have to right click and say get game instance. Cast to VN, convert this to a pure cast. And we're going to ask if, or get menu widget. I'm going to ask is in game, because we don't want to do anything if we're just in a menu and there's no game going on. So if it is in game, we're going to ask if the menu widgets get canvas panel 0, get visibility equals hit test invisible branch. So if it is hit test invisible, it means that it is on the screen, I believe. So we're going to want to set it to be set visibility to be self hit test invisible, and we're also going to need to set the opacity to be 0. Otherwise we're going to do the exact opposite. Or actually, we can just call the on clicked back here. I believe we can't actually just say do on clicked back. On clicked, yep, that won't actually pop up. So let's make a new custom event. I'm going to call this show dialog widget, and just plug this in here. So in our player controller, instead of doing all this stuff, we can say show dialog widget. And in the false, meaning we're not the menu is not visible, we are going to get our menu widget and just say show menu widget with an index of whatever you want your default thing to be. So I'm going to do it as 1. I believe that's our history. History is 1, yep. Okay, so let's compile, save, and compile and save, hit play. Right click, nothing happens because we're not in game. We hit start and right click. Okay, that's happening twice in a row. Oh, I want this unreleased, not on pressed. Break this link. Try that one more time. Start, right click, and this is still being called twice. What's going on here? Let me print. Okay, this is only being called once. So the problem is that this is being called in a sequence. Let me show dialog widget over here, set visibility. This is all good. This should be all good. Oh boy. Alright, back on the menu over here, let's just do a branch on the visibility of our canvas panel. So canvas panel, get visibility equals, we want to do this if it is hit or self hit test invisible. Like that. Let's see if this fixes it. Compile and save, press play. And nothing's actually happening now. Hit test invisible. Get visibility branch. So this should be visible. Then we're playing the animation. In reverse. Is this being called? Yep, this is being called. So this is returning false for some reason. If our canvas panel visibility is test invisible. On start, we set it to hit test hit test invisible. Sorry. So no, this should be hit test invisible. Let me think. Set visibility, self hit test invisible. No, okay, this branch actually isn't going to work. I'm actually not sure what's going on here. Let me do a breakpoint over here. If you don't know, a breakpoint allows you to just sort of pause the execution of your program. Actually, how long is this video? I don't want to make it too long. Alright. It allows you to pause the execution of your program and just see what's happening, basically. So let's hit play. Start, and we right click, and now our program is paused. So let's we can do this button over here to step to the next node. We're playing our animation, we're setting the visibility, and then that's all. Really? Let's toggle this breakpoint so it's off. But why is it appearing again? Why is it going back to our This is only calling show dialog widget. Show dialog widget is calling this animation. And that's it. Alright, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm just gonna save this for something else. But let's move on to doing our padding, because I really don't want to remake this video again. Sorry for wasting your time with that, but for our padding, if we were to hit play, start, and say break it, we go to our history. This is really close together, and it's really easy to tell that these are separate entries, but if we weren't to have any speakers here, it would just look like a bunch of lines next to each other, and it would be sort of hard to tell what's going on here. So I'm going to add some padding in our dialog widget. So over here, when we create our, sorry, not dialog widget, history widget. History, there it is. When we create our history entry, I'm just going to add some padding. So let's get our history entry and say slot, get slot, because we can't actually get a slot as scroll box for some reason. So get slot and cast to scroll box slot, and we know it's in a scroll box, so we can convert this to pure cast. And as a scroll box slot, we're going to set padding. I'm going to split this, and on the padding bottom, I'm going to do something like 50. So if we were to compile and save and play, start, break it, go to our history, and now we have some padding over here. If that's too much padding, you can obviously set this to whatever you want. Let's try 35. History, and that looks a little better. I'm going to do the same thing for our Codex entries. So in our Codex, when we create a new Codex details widget, I'm going to get slot cast to scroll box slot and convert to appear cast and set padding. Split this on the bottom. Let's do, say, 35 again. And we want to make sure to do this after we add our child to our detail scroll box. Otherwise, our slot is not going to be a scroll box slot, and this will fail. So let's try that. Start, break it, Codex for our pot, and we have some space in between there. We can also do the same thing for our options buttons in our dialog. When we create our buttons, show options, create button, slot as, we can actually do slot as vertical box because we know it's a vertical box, and set padding, split strike pin, and I'm going to do padding on the top and the bottom, otherwise it's just going to be on the bottom and it's going to look slightly off. So let's just do like 10 and 10. Compile, save, play, and start. Now we have some padding. Obviously, if you don't want the padding there, you don't need to put it, but it's there. And yeah, that would be it for this video, except I'm not sure what's going on. Honestly, I have no idea why this is happening when we right click. This wasn't happening before when in my last take of the video, so I'm not sure why it's happening now, but if I figure it out, I'll be sure to say what's wrong in the next video. But I'll hopefully see you then.